Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Audubon Society of Central Arkansas's monthly meeting. Tonight, our speaker is Jane Gulley, who is a longtime ASCA member and past president. After getting degrees from the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville and Memphis University, she taught high school, American history and English. Later, started a program on the conservation of bald eagles that became a nationwide model for which she was inducted into the Arkansas Outdoor Hall of Fame. In addition to eagles, she raised pigeons for 34 years and competed with racing pigeons and in the National Pigeon Association sanctioned program shows. And that is the topic of tonight's program, the pigeon, the ordinary, extraordinary, extraordinary pigeon. So take it away, Jane.
I will, because I am so excited about this. I just really enjoyed pigeons, and I thought before we get into the general pigeon stuff, I would start with the breeds that I have. And should we tell them that because I'm using the iPad Pro, it worked out that I have to say next slide? Do I need to do this on this one too? Go to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, please. Go, move one down. The first three, the breeds that I used that I competed with in the rare breeds, this was my pigeon clock. And by the time I got out of racing pigeons, no one used these old-timey clocks. They all have gone to computers and electronics now. And I got out of the club when the Central Arkansas Racing Pigeon Club disbanded because one of the officers stole our trailer and the treasury, and it has not, there's still racing pigeon things here, but I'm not involved with them now. Okay, next one. After the racing pigeons, I started doing rare breeds, and this was one, and I actually, I got good at it and showed all around the United States, went to Germany and imported some of these Vienna long-faced tumblers. These little birds weigh, like you see, about 9.5 ounces, super flyers. And I competed, the longer the beak and the flatter the head, but they're smart, real intelligent, perceptive little birds, just zip around the sky. They're incredibly fun to watch. The next one was my other breed, the Spanish Barb, which was the Spanish mailman for centuries. They're a stout, like little flying fire hydrant. They could take the winds in the mountains in Spain and deliver the mail. The only thing really bad about them is they're horrible breeders. And I had 6 pair, and I very seldom ever got 2 eggs that were fertile at the same time. And most of the time, nothing. And that wasn't just my birds, it was general. But I really competed. I mean, this was a good breed for me. And my birds were in were sought after because they were really good. They're real tame, nice, but sort of aloof bird. And the next one were my babies. The Budapest short-faced tumblers that only a mother could love. They weigh 5 ounces, teeny tiny little birds. They have frog stick-out eyes on the side. Their little beaks are little bitty, and the babies can't break out of the eggs. And I used the Vienna long-faced tumblers to feed these babies because the parents would try to feed them. Go to the next slide, and there are 3 more pictures of them. You'll see. Now, isn't that a beautiful, you can see what a beautiful little bird, 5 ounces, teeny, real sweet little birds. And here they are with those bug out eyes. These little birds, you had to request to be able to breed them. And I finally got to join the Empire Budapest Short-Faced Club, which was the club. And they would not let me use the name Jane Gulley. I had to use Thomas's name. They would not let a woman compete in the club, but my birds did extremely. Oh, I just enjoyed them so. Sweet little birds. Okay, these are, next one, these were, I only had 2 pair of these pygmy powders because Samuel just loved them. And they, look how knock-kneed that, can you see the bottom one? I put that picture and they're real knock-kneed. They puff up all the time and they are lovers. When they would see me coming toward the loft, when they were outside in the aviary, they would run inside. And when I'd get inside, they wanted to be held, petted, sit on your shoulder. I'd cradle them like little children. When I was tending to everybody else, they'd be there. They're just sweet little pets. The next ones are, have you ever been to the fair and seen the Dodgem cars? These are fantails, and they spend their time walking around in the loft, bumping one another with their chests. And every once in a while, they would knock one another over, and they can deflate. They don't have to do that. They just seem to enjoy it, but they're real sweet, and they like to be touched and fooled with and stuff too. I did not compete with either of those 2 breeds. I just had them because Samuel enjoyed them, and I used them as pumpers for the other breeds. The next ones, the next slide, these are ones that I started with and did not keep. The Old English Carrier, which is the tallest of the domestic breeds, weighs about 18 ounces. They're a big bird. They're real sweet, but they were too big for my loft. The next one, the Frillback, is also a larger bird, and they got stuff in their feathers all the time and look messy, and I just didn't like that. And then the last one, the Danzig High Flyer, which is a real popular bird in Europe, but not very popular in the United States. Those birds are mean, and they disrupted my loft all the time, so we parted ways. Okay, now we're going to go to the real show. Are you ready, Dan? Okay. Let me get ready. Okay, now this is just general about pigeons in general, not the birds that I had. Like I said, I had them for 34 years, so I had them for a long time. And this is a PowerPoint that Dan's getting ready to pull up in just any minute now. And when we get started, I'll just go ahead and start. The other Wednesday, I was coming home and I was at the corner of Shackelford and Financial Parkway. And as I looked over, there was a patch of grass and dirt, and there were 4 rock doves, pigeons there. And as I looked at them, you cannot help but look at them and not laugh, because when they walk, their heads bob in and out, and they just look so cute doing that. And then the sun was on them, and you could see the beautiful iridescence of their feathers. And I thought there was an unsolicited moment of joy there that I had, and hope other people got to enjoy it, because they're so common to see, but at the same time, they're so pretty and interesting. Okay, the next slide is going to be a quote from our mothership, National Audubon, and it talks about the differences in pigeons and doves. The word pigeon is the French word for young dove, and I found a quote that I thought was really good. A dove is a pigeon with a good PR man. We seem to like doves better than pigeons, but they're the same thing. And the next slide is that pigeons mirror our lives, the ups and the downs. And honestly, you could be in the loft and it was like looking at a little microscopic community in there, the things that they did. They're interesting, entertaining. They're very, very trusting birds, and they like people. They've been domesticated since 4,500 BC. So they've been with us for a long time. The next slide I just put in because I thought it was cute. Some days you're the pigeon and some days you're the statue. The next one is our pigeon quiz. Now, as we look at this, you'll see again how long they've been domesticated and how they've served us over time. But when we do this quiz, remember, pigeons are one of the most researched of all creatures in the scientific community. They've been studied backwards and forwards for years. And here's your pigeon quiz. You can answer out loud if you want to, although you're on mute. What bird has been a domesticated friend to man longer than any other? What animal is a traditional symbol of love and peace? What winged creature can think abstractly, form concepts, and commit images to memory many times faster than human beings? 4. What birds did Queen Victoria raise and love? What animal formed Charles Darwin's studies and later became his loving friends? What animal did Picasso love so much he named his daughter after them? What animal did Lockheed Aircraft Company use to send messages between facilities across Los Angeles in order to avoid traffic? What bird has no sound for pain and therefore suffers and dies in silence? What animal has been revered for 12,000 years and only in the last century has been severely abused by man? What is the common name for the rock dove? What bird adorns foods, beauty products, a famous bank, and credit cards worldwide? What is one member of the dinosaur family who is still alive and well today? And if you said pigeon for those, you get an A+ on your written exam. Okay, the next slide. Pigeons are found almost the world over except in real cold places, and there are about 300 different kinds. 2 of the most beautifully colored birds in the world are pigeons, and one is the bleeding heart dove of the Philippines, and the other is the, what is it? The Asian fruit pigeon, and it's the bottom one. The next slide, isn't that gorgeous? Look, that's a fruit dove, and she's got her wings over her 2 babies. My sister knew I was doing this, and she found that picture and sent it to me, so I had to put that in there. But it's just a gorgeous bird. The next slide. Okay, you can do your wings, do your arms, and if you can clap your arms in front of your body, up over your head, and behind your back, and I have trouble with that. That's what pigeons can do, and they do. Yay! Good pitch. See if you can do it behind your back now. It's not easy. They do that in their courtship display. They've been clocked at over 90 miles an hour. They can fly straight up and down, straight up and down. They can fly at night. They can fly nonstop for about 16 hours. A pigeon released in Africa took 55 days to fly to England and traveled almost 7,000 miles. So they're amazing flyers. The next slide shows their crop. And this is another quote from Audubon. Birds that need to swallow large amounts of food hurriedly at a faster rate than the stomach can accommodate it. The most specialized crop is found in a pigeon. And the pigeons inflate their crop. That's what makes them coo. That's also where they make their pigeon milk. And when I was looking this up, I found, I don't know if this is true. I got it off the internet, so it must be right. Dan, you listen to this. It said birds with crops. Most raptors, yes. Owls, no. Chickens, turkeys, yes. Geese, no. Generally seed-eating birds, yes. And then I found another thing, and it said some snails and earthworms have a crop. Anyway, that won't be a test question, but I just thought that was interesting. The next slide is a pigeon drinking water. And unlike most birds that just tip their head in and then tip it up and let gravity do the water down, pigeons suck like we do with a straw. And this top one is an ad, I think, from Foy's Pigeon Things, and those were exactly what my waters look like. But look at the one at the bottom with him taking the drink out of the hydrant. Okay, the next slide are their wattles, and you can see that the wattles, which is that fleshy part just above their beak, and just I don't have anything to point with what I'm doing, and above their nostril, wattles come in all sizes, and the bottom one is the Old English carrier. And like I said, I used to raise those, but they were too big for my loft. But you have to clean their wattle, and I did it every other day. Monday I did boys wattles, Tuesdays girls, Wednesdays boys, Thursday, like constantly, because they get stuff stuck in their wattle, and it's kind of hard to take care of them. But like I said, that wattle is just above their nostril. And this is another quote from Audubon, from an article that was in Audubon, and it says, "Pigeons follow their noses home. They recognize scents carried on breezes to navigate." This was after a 40-year study. And we used to always say that birds didn't have a sense of smell, and now they've decided that's not true at all. Pigeons have a very perceptive sense of smell, and it really influences their lives. The next slide is their ears. And if you put your hands on the side where your ears are, theirs are in the very same place. They're just holes, but they're covered with the feathers, like on other birds. And the eye sear is that part, the skin, the flesh around the eye. And you can see that on some birds, show birds, not birds that are out, that's been developed. And the Spanish barbs had that. The older they got, the thicker that got. And pretty soon you could barely see that is a Spanish barb, that you could barely see their eyes. They can see ultraviolet light, which people can't. And y'all have all heard people that say, oh, they have perfect pitch, and they're talking about music. Pigeons have perfect pitch in the visual spectrum. It's just amazing what they could see. They're incredibly observant, and they can discriminate color just down to the nth degree, I guess you would say. They also have amazing peripheral vision, which a lot of birds do. Theirs is particularly wide. It's like 200 degrees. And I was telling Thomas that, and he said, gosh, they'd make great basketball players because they could see almost all the way around. So when you think about it. Now, this is another quote. The common pigeon has and we're talking about rock doves. There are pigeons that live in trees and nest in trees. Rock doves, like, started out in caves. They've adjusted to city life because of the ledges of buildings and things. The common pigeon has a tremendous capacity to discriminate and categorize a wide range of objects and images. Research over the past, I can't even talk, I'm so excited, past 50 years at UCA Davis, partly in collaboration with Cornell University. Now, that's you, isn't it, Dan? Cornell? Yay. Has shown that pigeons, one, can distinguish identities and emotional expressions on human faces. They can quickly learn the different letters of alphabets, and some pigeons were trained to learn the English alphabet and the Russian alphabet, and they could distinguish and do that. They also could identify misshapen pharmaceutical capsules. And this was an interesting story. The capsules would come down in a big tray, and they had human workers there to get out the ones that were misshapen, and pigeons. And the pigeons were almost 90% more efficient. And it was because it was a boring job, and the people would get bored and not pay attention. Plus, they needed breaks all the time. The pigeons loved looking for misshapen capsules, and they would grab at them every time and get so excited. And evidently, every once in a while, they'd get a kernel of corn, and that would keep them working. Their visual, this is still from the quote, their visual memory is equally impressive, with a proven recall of more than 1,800 images. Now, this is from that study between Cornell and UC Davis. Listen to this. This is really amazing. They wondered how pigeons would perform on pathology slides. Pigeons were especially adept at discriminating breast cancer slides. They were taught to discriminate cancerous from non-cancerous images on slides. They had a level of performance on par with human radiologists and radiology residents who were given the same cases to review. The only thing is, if they came in and told me a pigeon had been looking at my slide, I don't know if I'd have been that impressed with it or not. Okay, the next one. This one, and thanks to Susan Harden, who sent me this from the newspaper, and y'all probably saw it. It was November 16th in the newspaper. Racing pigeons sold for $1.9 million. In 2019, one sold for $1.4 million. If you're buying racing homers, all of them will be advertised with this eye sign. Most pigeon racing breeders are big believers in the eye sign. They either believe in it or they think it's total hooey. But the eye sign is supposed to be the view into the whole bird and how perceptive it will be when it's out. You might like to know that they still today have pigeon races. They've been having them in Las Vegas, and the purses on those are close to $1 million. These birds were bought by a person in China, where pigeon racing it's like one of the #1 sports and a really big deal. Okay, the next slide, we're about to finish up, this is from Scientific America. And this is a quote from Scientific America. The one with the Scientific America writing above it was the picture on the magazine. Okay, this is the quote. Sleep is for the brain and not the body. Pigeons are not entirely unconscious when they sleep like humans. Half asleep would be the best way to describe the state of a sleeping pigeon. And this does not just apply to pigeons. This applies to most birds. Their brains, the hemisphere of their brain is divided into completely separate parts. So one side of their body and brain can be asleep while the other side is wide awake and conscious of what's going on. Now that in itself is pretty amazing. The next slide are flying pigeons. Most pigeons don't migrate, but the ones that do usually have a hunting season on them. And when they do migrate, they like to migrate in flocks. Pigeons are incredibly social. They're a groupie bird. They want their friends around them. And in the loft, they like to know what their neighbors are doing. And you'd see them peek out of their nest box over to the other nest box to see what was going on over there. They're really neat. The next one of the most sweet and wonderful things in the world is to see the baby pigeons hatch. I put my birds together on Valentine's Day each year. They mate for life. They stay together for life. They lay 2 eggs. They hatch in about 18 days. They lay 2 eggs, but they don't start setting until the second egg is laid. Frequently, if just one baby hatches, they'll abandon the nest. If something happens to one of the parents, they immediately abandon. They don't go on. But the eggs hatch in the same day. They, in the wild, they'll live 3 to 5 years is the average. In captivity or in a loft, they can live over 20 years, but they have a very high rate of mortality. They have a high rate of mortality even in the loft when you're trying to be, very conscientious. But in the wild, it's 85 to 88% mortality in that first year. The next slide is they're feeding the baby. And remember, the crop where they make the pigeon milk, both the mother and the daddy make the pigeon milk. They both feed the babies, of course. And the pigeon milk is sort of cream colored, and it's the consistency of small curd cottage cheese. It's even kind of lumpy, sort of. It's incredibly nutritious. The little babies double their weight in 48 hours. In 5 days, the parents start mixing some seeds in with the milk, but they make the milk for about 3 weeks. And some parents just don't want their babies to grow up, and they'll just they'll have huge children. They can keep making pigeon milk evidently longer because they'll just keep feeding these giant babies that you have to take away from them. In a month, this little baby will be a squab and we'll be eating it. It's #1 protein source for places around the world. The next slide, the pilgrims. As we said before, pigeons have been domesticated since 4,500 BC, but pilgrims brought them to the New World in 1621, but the French had already brought them here. In 1606, they brought them to Nova Scotia to a fur trading setup, and they're listed on the lading of the Mayflower. The reason they brought them is because they are a #1 food source in Europe, and you don't have to feed the pigeons. You keep them up, then you let them go. They go forage for food, and then they come back, and you can eat the eggs or the adult birds later on after you get your numbers up. So when the next slide, when the pilgrims and the French brought the rock doves here, we already had pigeons here, which we're all familiar with the story of the passenger pigeons that were hunted to extinction. And I'm going to read a horrible quote. The last one, they're talking about the passenger pigeons. The last one in the wild was shot in Ohio on March 24th, 1900. When it became obvious that the passenger pigeon had become extinct in the wild, hosts of people with captive birds tossed them up to be shot, trying for the honor of being listed in history as the person who shot the last of this marvelous species. That was from Quinn Bird World, 1982. The last passenger pigeon died in 1914. Her name was Martha. She was named after Martha Washington, and she was mounted, and she's now in the National Museum. The next slide, we probably should have done these, and these are the last ones. This is my pigeon loft. When I had racing homers, that wasn't the loft. I had a different loft on the patio. The next one, these are the nest boxes, and you can see my fantails down there, but everything in there was painted different colors because they love color. And so everybody had their own little, it helped them make sure they were getting in their own house, I guess, too, because they didn't like unsolicited visitors into their nest box. The next slide is the last one. For a while, I had Birmingham rollers. And this is the loft. You can see the aviary out here, and they went in. I'm pointing, and of course y'all can't see this. Up at the top, and there's a little house thing there. They went in the very top, went down that chute, dropped down, and then went into the loft. The problem was Birmingham rollers fly up high, and then they roll down. All pigeons roll, but they've bred certain ones to roll more. Well, we don't live but a few blocks from the Arkansas River, so we get a lot of migration down through there. When the hawks and things were migrating, the birds would go up, and this is horrible. I didn't keep them very long because there'd be a puff and a bunch of feathers would be coming down in my yard and my neighbor's yard. It looked like a bird in distress when they rolled, so it just attracted every predator that you can imagine to come. Later, I put the Vienna Tumblers in there because the hawks really and truly couldn't get them. They're such fast, quick flyers. Okay, the next one is our last slide, and it's a preview, or as my mother-in-law used to always say, a short that would be coming up. You know that next month is our business meeting. And then Dottie's going to do, and I'm the fill-in person for Dottie, and I hope she's feeling better and everything's going well. She'll be doing, and then the next time we're going to have a DVD that's going to show real footage from the pigeons in the war, and then a little bit more about racing homers, and we'll talk about that next time. Okay, did I make it in under time? I've been rushing.
You did a good job. Thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody will want to have pigeons now, I know, because they're wonderful.